I just turned 35 and I was really reflecting on how I want to be more intentional about how I approach aging going forward, because I don't want to subscribe to this narrative that aging is bad and we should be ashamed of aging and fight it and just feel like shit about ourselves, especially as women, once we get to a certain age. Aging is a privilege denied to many. So every year I really want to embrace the passing of time with gratitude and celebration and pride and reflection. And what really hit me on my birthday this year was how much I like who I am now. Like, I wouldn't want to go back to my 25-year-old self. Youth be damned. I way prefer who I am and how I am living now that I'm approaching this age that is like deemed as losing your youth and getting older. But I like 35-year-old me because I have amassed so much wisdom and perspective and knowledge, and that feels like such a gift. So I'm really grateful for the growth and learning and self-development that I've done to become the most me that I've ever been throughout adulthood, and for all of the lessons that have really shaped who I am. So as part of my birthday journaling and reflections that I like to do every year, I dove into 35 of the most important lessons I have learned at 35. Now, some of these you might have heard a million times already, but I still feel like it helps me to hear things that I already know when they hit at the right time and when I'm open to being reminded. And maybe some of these lessons will be new to you, but almost all of them come from the 5 years that I've been doing this podcast, which just makes me so fulfilled and happy to be doing this. So I hope these resonate with you, and I hope you'll comment on social or below the episode on Spotify and YouTube to let me know the lesson that hits the most for you. Okay, let's dive in. These are in no particular order of importance, so they don't start with like the biggest or end with the biggest. This is really a brain dump of the most valuable things that I have amassed in 35 years, from guests, from reading, from podcasts, from work, from relationships, from all of it. So starting with number one of the key things that it took me a while to learn is that motivation is a myth. You cannot wait for it to show up. So it really is about setting up systems for doing that allow discipline to come with more ease. So discipline is just so much more important than motivation, because motivation comes from that dopamine hit reward that you get from the pursuit of doing. So if you're waiting, you're going to be waiting forever for motivation. So I've really started to create more systems that allow me to just get into action, and then motivation will slowly start to come with that and make it easier for you, but it's usually not the starting point for getting shit done. The second one, a huge one for me, is that confidence is built by keeping promises to yourself. As a millennial woman, or just a human on planet Earth, so many of us have gone through so many trials and attempts to cultivate confidence, from like the most shallow and vain attempts of like controlling your appearance, controlling your body, from just doing all of the things that the magazines, the TV shows, the influencers tell you to do to look good, to feel good. It's not something that will come externally. That no amount of validation will actually really make you feel confident. There will always be something to fixate on. For me, it has all come down to self-trust. The more promises I keep to myself, the more I believe myself, the more I am of my word to myself, the more confident I show up in the world. So I've really realized it's not going to spin class that like wildly changes how I look or how I show up in the world. It's that I said I was going to do it, and I did it, and I followed through, and I'm like, yeah, I'm that girl that does the shit she says she's going to do for herself. That's what feels good and makes me feel confident. The third one came from a lot of career ups and downs and disappointments and heartbreaks. And that is that a career North Star is more important than a dream job, because I was fixated on my dream job. I had like a job title that I was pursuing from day one. I wanted to be editor-in-chief of like one of 3 magazines that I loved. That was from probably like high school on my driving force. And when I got laid off multiple times and the industry collapsed around me, I was in crisis. I lost my identity because the pursuit of this job title became so much of who I was. It became so much of my identity. So I was fucking floundering. It was devastating. And through that, I realized that having more of a North Star is so much more spacious. It keeps you open to opportunities, open to pivoting into a different direction for the better, as long as it's aligned with your North Star. So my life really changed for the better when I let go of that career title trajectory that I was married to and allowed myself to hone in on, well, what's the actual purpose? What's the mission I want to be aligned with? What's like the story of what I want to be doing? Because there's many ways to achieve that. There's so many ways to get to where you want to go. It doesn't necessarily need to be one thing. So when I realized, I just want to be a storyteller and I want to be of service. So it doesn't have to be working for a magazine that I think helps women. It could also be podcasting, working in film and television. There's so many ways to get there. So a career North Star and not getting married to one specific job will really, I think, set you free. Another big one is the antidote to anxiety is self-trust. I'm going to say that again because that one like really blew my mind when I fully grasped it. The antidote to anxiety is self-trust. And I'm still learning and integrating this one, to be honest, but I can now at least constantly remind myself that it's not possible to eliminate all anxiety entirely. But when I do feel anxious, when an anxiety, a concern, a fear, a worry comes up, now I can focus my attention on trusting myself, trusting that I am capable of handling whatever is making me anxious. If I'm anxious about a work situation, if I'm anxious about a difficult conversation with a friend or a family member, instead of spiraling into the depths of anxiety, as I have done my whole life, I can now be like, I have a track record of doing well with people, cultivating good relationships, doing well at work. I can trust myself. And that self-trust, I think, is like the best agent for calming. Number 5, we've all heard this before, but I don't think I truly understood it till recently. You are who you surround yourself with. My life changed probably the most drastically in the past few years because I found more communities of like-minded creatives and dreamers and philosophers and people that just exposed me to a different way of living, a different way of being, a different way of thinking, and a way that was much more aligned with who I really want to be. So your bar for normal is set by the people that you're exposed to the most. If you're exposed to people that you're not aligned with, if you're exposed to people who are really narrow-minded, who are really negative, who are always complaining, or just who aren't in your field, who aren't pursuing the things that you want to pursue, it's not to say that there's not value in those people. Everybody has value. It's important to have so many kinds of people around you. But if those are the only people you have around you, it can really lower that bar of achievement and of dreaming because you don't know what's possible till you surround yourself with people who are showing you what's possible. So take a look, do an audit. Who are you spending the most time with? And make sure the people that pop up are people that are supportive, inspiring, people that are aligned with who you want to be. Next up, most of good communication is regulation. This was huge for me, learning to pause before I respond, learning to breathe and just really regulating before I jump into response, panic, rebuttal. Especially if you're really sensitive like I am, I can spiral in a difficult conversation, but focusing on really regulating allows me to stay present to what's actually happening in front of me. It allows me to be a better friend, a better partner, a better family member, and it allows me to show up as my best self because I'm not being my panicked, catastrophizing self. I'm calm, I'm centered, I'm regulated, and it leads to way deeper communication and connection. Number 7, I learned this one from Nicole's neuroscience on a previous episode of the podcast, and it's so freaking cool. You can grow the part of your brain that does hard things. So if you feel like I hate doing hard things, if you feel like maybe you're just like risk adverse or a little lazy or have trouble finding motivation to do things that are just like a bigger lift in your life, if you feel like you're someone who lacks willpower, you can actually grow this part of yourself. You can develop this like a muscle. So the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, I hope I said that right, I am not a neuroscientist, is a hub for willpower and tenacity. And with effort and with repeatedly doing things that are a bit more difficult, that are not just like the quick dopamine hit, you can strengthen and grow it so that hard things aren't so hard in the future. So you're basically making an investment deposit into your brain, physically into your brain for your future willpower. And I love that. Number 8, I have learned to approach my life in chapters, and it's been really, really helpful. We tend to think of every big decision that we make as a permanent, forever decision, and that can feel daunting paralyzing, scary. So I've started to just approach my life as though it's a chapter book to ease some of that pressure and to open me up to curiosity, opportunity, and to the reality that there are so many twists and turns ahead of me. I have no idea how the story is going to end. All I can do is be in the chapter that I'm in right now. So, for example, taking a specific job right now doesn't mean I'm going to be doing that job forever. I'm probably going to do like 15 more different jobs before I die. I just have to decide, what job do I want in this next chapter? What's the best fit for me and who I am right now? What city do I want to live in for this next chapter? What kind of home do I want to live in for this next chapter? It doesn't have to be forever. It's not going to be forever. So just knowing that another chapter exists after this one and that you don't have to have the whole story figured out is very liberating. It's empowering, and it just lets you stay in the present of what decision is the right one for me right now. This next one is a personal attack on myself, and that is busy doesn't mean productive. I spent my 20s so burnt out and overextended and exhausted, and I was glorifying how busy I was. It was like this badge of honor of how busy I was, how late I worked, how I always had way too much going on, and I'm so over it. And I know it's like the millennial hustle culture that we grew up in, and now we're in like a soft Moss girl era, but I would much rather be less busy, getting shit done intentionally and efficiently and not performing outside of my actual capacity and taking care of myself. That's what's up. Not being so busy that you don't have time to make yourself food all day. I'm breaking up with that ideology that I had in my 20s. So focus on like what actually moves the needle for me in my life and helps me be productive rather than constantly staying so busy that you can't take care of yourself. Number 10. Nothing matters if you don't have your health, because youth comes with this feeling of invincibility. And I, more than anybody, had this. I would, again, glorify the all-nighters, glorify like the lack of sleep, how I could push through a hangover and go to work and crush it. But with age, with witnessing a lot of people that I love who have had their health snatched from them way too early, I'm really seeing that health has to be the number one priority, because if you don't have it, you can't show up as a partner to your friendships, at work, whatever you're giving all your time to right now, you won't be able to give your time to it anymore when you don't have your health. So a huge shift for me as I'm in my mid-30s is taking my health seriously, because I really deprioritized it and neglected it. It was like, we'll sleep when we're dead, and just pushed through for all of my 20s and a good portion of my 30s. And not only is it a toxic way of thinking, it's like a really toxic way of how to treat your body. Health is not guaranteed. I'm also attacking myself with this next one. If you have to drink to tolerate something, stop doing it. I hate that it took me probably till like 32 years old to figure that out, but I am so glad that I did, because I used to drink to get through things. I used to drink to find things fun. I used to drink to socially lubricate because I didn't actually feel myself or comfortable in the situations that I was in. And now I'm just at a point where I'm like, if I have to get drunk to do this thing, I'm not going to do this thing. Next up, movement is medicine. This is something I'm sure we all know. Physically and mentally, it is one of the best sources of medicine. But really, it was a huge transition for me to go from moving my body for punishment to finding ways of exercise that I genuinely love. It changed so much for me. Like, I look forward to working out now. I look forward to going to spin classes where I've intentionally chosen that class because I love the music and I fucking jam out for an hour and the endorphin hit is insane. I love the slow, meditative reformer Pilates. I love going for beautiful nature walks. I love hikes. Like, I really have honed in on what brings me joy. And now I don't work out to punish myself because I ate a whole loaf of sour bread yesterday. I do it because I want to change my mental state. I do it because I want to physically feel good for as long as I can. It's genuinely to take care of myself inside out. And that allows me to show up way more consistently and to genuinely enjoy the process. Like, I don't want to hate the things I'm doing. I'm 35. I'm too old for that. Number 13, gratitude is the shortcut to more happiness. That's it. That's the tweet. It's gratitude. If you are deeply unhappy right now, if you are struggling to find joy, if you're disillusioned in the world, I beg of you, please start a gratitude practice. It will train your brain to literally notice more good in the world. There is so much research on this. There's so much that shows how good it is for our mental health to have a constant practice of gratitude. You can just start with 3 things every day. You can do it when you wake up. You can do it before you go to bed. You can write it down. You can say it out loud with your partner. Gratitude is such a happiness hack. We don't need to buy the $3,000 course. It's gratitude. This next one is really interesting. Emotions pass quicker if you just let them flow. So research shows that primary emotions can subside within 60 to 90 seconds if you don't interfere with them, if you just let them pass without fighting them, without dissecting them and ruminating on them. So as much as possible in my life, it's easier said than done, but I'm trying to train myself more and more to let myself ride that wave of the emotion that pops up rather than spiraling and creating like more suffering and more other difficult emotions because I latch onto it and start fighting with it. If you can ride the wave, that really intense emotion can pass faster. Another great one, curiosity is the best communication hack. It moves you from fear or defensiveness or trying to change the other person into a place of openness and wanting to actually understand the person. I talked to Bea Voce about this earlier in the year, and it changed the way I approach communication in my relationships forever, for the better. Like, this is probably the most important mindset shift I had last year, is how can I apply curiosity to every conversation I have, especially the difficult ones, because curiosity equals closeness and intimacy. And that is what I want in all of my relationships, closeness and intimacy. And it only comes from like not going into that closed off state of like defensiveness or wanting to be right or like not liking what the person says. So you just kind of contract, but instead curiosity opens us up to like deep understanding of each other. And I think that's what love is. Another good relationship reminder is learning to understand your needs and asking for what you want. I went through a lot of my early life expecting people to know what I wanted and to be able to show up in the ways that I needed. And, you know, I'm sure that's learned behavior when you grow up in a culture where like you don't ask for things, you don't want to like ever inconvenience anyone, but you also expect people to meet your needs. People aren't mind readers. And I had a few friends that kind of repeatedly were like, Jill, people aren't mind readers. Like, state what you need. Like, tell them what you're thinking. Let them know. So I'm getting a lot better at expressing what I actually need, because it's really unfair to expect people to be mind readers and to show up exactly how you want. So over prescribe, over dictate, communicate your needs. Clarity is kindness. And that brings me to a good antidote to people pleasing. If you struggle with people pleasing like I have, and with self-abandonment, ask yourself, when you're not really sure what's going on, when you feel like you're self-abandoning, ask yourself two things. Who am I doing this for? And what am I doing this for? This is something I am still very much working on, and it can be really uncomfortable, but I'm really learning that if I'm overextending myself for approval, so I'm doing this for approval, and who am I doing this for? Not really for the person I'm doing it for. I'm doing it for myself, for selfish reasons, because I want approval. If I'm doing it for acceptance, to be loved, to feel like I'm important, maybe I need to step back and rethink this, take a breath, and decide, what do I actually have capacity for? Do I actually want to be doing this? Is this aligned with who I am? Because I only want to do things that are fulfilling to me, that I actually have capacity for, and to do things because I genuinely want to help someone without expecting anything in return. I want to be of service. That's a good reason for me to say yes to doing things, not because I'm like, oh, I better do this or I won't be loved. So really switching into a mindset of not trying to constantly prove that I'm enough, but to hone in on, why am I doing this? What am I doing it for? Who am I doing it for? And make sure I'm happy with that answer before I commit to things. I've come back to this next one so many times in the last few years, and that is that your gut always knows the answer. You just have to get quiet enough to hear it. I feel like, especially if you're like an anxious or sensitive person, it's so easy to outsource things to everyone. Like, you go to experts, you go to books, you go to podcasts, maybe like this one, you go to your friends, you go to your mom, you ask everybody for advice. You're so stuck, you don't know what to do. But I think we actually all innately know what to do in any situation that you're in. Should I end this relationship? Should I leave or go? Should I, move abroad and take this opportunity? Should I quit this job? We weigh these decisions out painstakingly. We get so muddled and so confused, and we busy ourselves with all this noise, and we can't actually hear the truth, which is always in us. Your gut knows. You know the answer. You just have to get really quiet. Next up, nature is one of the ultimate healers. I'm a better person when I'm connected to nature and spending time outdoors, and the research backs this up. It shows 2 hours a week in nature is the dose associated with significantly improved mental health and well-being, and just 20 minutes significantly reduces cortisol, aka your stress hormone levels. Also, a 90-minute walk in nature lowers activity in the part of your brain that's associated with negative ruminating thoughts. So if you are crashing out, if you are ruminating nonstop, go for a walk. So nature is a remedy that I don't think we're using enough in our culture. Number 20, time is your most valuable asset and resource. Managing how you spend it is literally one of the most important life hacks. So I've been working on getting a lot more intentional with how I spend my free time. I don't want to just doom scroll my free time away because my time is valuable. Ultimately, really thinking of time as a resource, the same way that we think of money. We don't just want to throw $100 an hour away at nothing. So why are we just willing to throw all of our hours away? So spending that time carefully and really valuing it is a huge mindset shift in how we can approach our lives. The next lesson that I've really experienced is that money doesn't buy happiness, but it can buy freedom of choice. So I've really shifted away from the chase for more, and I don't really pay attention to the kind of consumerism and consumption that people do to keep up and to like maintain a certain facade and a certain lifestyle. Instead, I focus on pursuing freedom. So my pursuit of money is to allow for more freedom, because to me, abundance is freedom of time and freedom of opportunity. I want to be able to say yes to the things that genuinely bring me joy, which are experiences and work opportunities or projects that maybe aren't super lucrative but are super fulfilling. And I can say yes to that if I've managed my money in a way that allows me to pursue whatever opportunity I want. So it really comes down to getting to spend my time how I want. That is the ultimate luxury. It's, as my partner often says, the art of how to make a living while keeping your soul intact. I really love that. Another big one is that grit matters more than talent and connections. I constantly remind myself of this when I'm feeling a little down and out and disenchanted, because for every successful or renowned person that you know, there are 1,000 people with as much intelligence and talent. But the difference is the ones at the top, the ones that you actually see in a place of success, have grit. So if you want to do big things, cultivate grit. This next lesson I learned is that your yeses and your nos hold a lot of power. So learning when to use them and how to use them gives you a lot of power. I have been a massive yes woman at parts of my life, and then I've protected myself in seasons of no, but maybe too hard, saying no to everything, like protecting your peace at the cost of living a full life. So either extreme, I think, can lead to self-abandonment or avoidance. If you're always saying yes, if you're always saying no, and if you're not clear on what actually feels good or why you're saying yes or no, it's going to really get in the way of your life. So examining what feels like a whole body yes, what feels good to say yes to, and when can I say it with my whole chest, attuning to a hell yes, and then also being really aware of what your no's are and not compromising those, having boundaries around those. And that brings me to the next one, which is a conversation on boundaries, because boundaries are so important. As we all know, everybody's talking about them. And as a former doormat who had no boundaries, I definitely learned the importance of having boundaries to protect myself, to show up as my best self, both self-boundaries and boundaries with others. But I think they're also being misused a lot. I've done an episode on this before, and boundaries are not supposed to make us assholes. They're supposed to create bridges. They're not supposed to create walls. So boundaries aren't an excuse to cut people out willy-nilly because you didn't get your way. They're not an excuse to be a jerk, and they're not meant to protect you from ever feeling discomfort. Like, you don't want to have a hard conversation, so you just never talk to someone again. We're supposed to have uncomfortable experiences that help us grow and that can, bring us closer ultimately. So proper boundaries should do just that. They should bring you closer to those around you because they guide both parties involved in how each person wants to be treated. They're actually a kindness. You're doing the person a kindness by showing them like, hey, this is actually what makes me feel good. I want to give you the little guidebook that will help you navigate me. And I want to learn how to navigate you to the best of my abilities. And properly laid boundaries help us figure out how to best show up for each other and for ourselves. Number 25, get comfortable with your own company. This was a huge journey for me. I have been on, just as anyone who's followed me for a while knows, a massive journey of like getting very comfortable with being alone and with just being myself and understanding that loneliness and solitude are two very different things. And when you're solid with yourself, it's so helpful in building a strong foundation because everything else becomes additive. You don't settle for scraps from other people because you're starving and you're lonely. You have a solid foundation in yourself, a comfort with being on your own, And then you can add in people and activities that bring you something more and that elevate your life. But I think when we are scared of being alone, when we are stuck in loneliness and we don't know how to just have like a healthy amount of solitude, that's when we start accepting behaviors, people, situations that don't serve us, because anything feels better than being alone. And I have been that person before, and it was really hard. So getting comfortable with just solitude, because I spend a lot of time alone. I want to like myself and I want to know what to do to make myself happy on my own. And then everything else is a beautiful addition. This next one is a direct rebuttal to individualism, and that is that healing happens in communities. This is really important. We are in such an individualistic time, individual therapy, doing self-work. Everyone's saying, it's all an inside job, but healing is also a community job. It's a village job. I do think it takes a village. I think group therapy is insanely impactful and effective. I think couples therapy can be so powerful, because if one person is going through something, it's going to affect both of you. So to be able to go through therapy or go through healing together in family units, in partnerships, in your community, that's where huge progress and huge healing comes. I don't think you can have all the answers and be like 100% healed before you get into a relationship, for example. I think that healing happens in relationship with others, in the right relationship. Same goes for friendships, same goes with family. We are all mirrors for each other. And I really don't think we can do all the work ourselves in isolation, because we're never actually tested. We're never fully expressed in isolation and in individual environments. So it really reminds me of that Ram Dass quote, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family. You do need to probably go spend a week with your family if you're able, and if you have a relationship with your family, because that is when everything kind of integrates and alchemizes. It's not a solo job. The next one I love is that two things can be true at once. That's one of my mottos that I've really adopted and learned from some dear friends. We get really stuck in binary thinking. I think we often only see one point of view and we get really attached to it. And there's so much more nuance in approaching life with a yes and mentality. So yes, I said I wanted this thing and I'm finding it really challenging. Like, yes, I'm not happy with work right now, and it's still aligned with what I want to be doing with my life. So it ultimately eliminates all or nothing thinking and black and white thinking, and allows you to hold the fact that in almost every situation, two things are true at once. Two stories are happening alongside each other. And if you can kind of wrap your head around both and hold both of them, there's a lot more context, there's a lot more nuance. You can go a lot deeper and you can understand a situation way more. Next up, this is one we definitely all know by now, but I think we could all use a reminder, and that is that you cannot hate yourself into self-improvement. Trust me, I have tried. I think most of us have tried. Hate is a terrible, terrible motivator, and love is honestly the key to real lasting change and to growth and to evolution. It has to come from love, because the intensity of that hate, to sustain it enough to actually be consistent in changing, it's so toxic. It's all consuming. And how do you continuously care about and take care of something that you hate? But you can take care of something that you love. So if you really can come from a place of love in your self-improvement journey, it's so much more of a beautiful and lasting process. I have found this next one to be quite liberating, especially as someone who puts their entire life kind of on the internet for a living. Nobody actually cares what you're doing. And that's really liberating and empowering, because we are all so scared of being cringe. I remember launching this podcast, I was so scared of what people would think. I was so worried about not being overly earnest or preachy or cringy. And the reality is nobody is thinking about you as much as you think that they are. So if you can release the hold that other people's opinions have on you, you are going to open up your life for the better, because I would fucking hate to live my life based on what other people think, only to find out that those people weren't thinking about me at all. Number 30 comes straight from my girl, Brene Brown, who I have learned so much from. And that is to counteract shame with vulnerability, because shame is a corrosive emotion that can lead to severe avoidance, self-hate, hiding or lying important parts of yourself and your life. But when we shed light on it, when we share vulnerability, when we let people in, it lifts us out of that avoidance, out of that hiding, out of the negative self-image, and it lets other people show up for us. It lets solutions come flooding in. It lets people come in and say, oh, me too. I've been going through this as well. So you're actually like opening the door for someone else and creating connection. Exposing those parts of ourselves really helps us grow. It helps us move forward in our lives for the better, and it releases the hold that shame can have on us. So vulnerability is just such an incredible tool for getting through hard things. I've been thinking a lot about this next one lately, and that is that there's a difference between knowing something and actualizing it. I think that we're in an information age where we're all great at like intellectualizing things and like, thinking about them. Especially as a journalist and a podcaster, I have amassed a lot of information, but having information about a thing doesn't necessarily translate into like deep knowledge and into action and into change. So for example, I can know everything about why certain vegetables are superfoods and really healthy to eat. And that makes me feel like I'm a health conscious person and that I'm healthier and knowledgeable because I know a lot of information in the health space. But that doesn't mean I'm actually fucking eating the vegetables. This is like a true story. I feel like sometimes because I have the knowledge, I convince myself that like that's most of the battle. I know the thing, so like I'm already there. But I'm not doing anything with that information. I'm not actually using it in my life. So it's pretty meaningless. So when I think I know something, now I really try to make sure that I've actually integrated it through action and experiences instead of just like holding the information in my head and not doing anything with it and thinking that it's making a difference. Number 32, it's okay to outgrow people and environments. This is a really hard one, especially, as we move from our 20s to 30s. Everything serves you for the season that you're in, and that season doesn't need to last forever. Something being fleeting doesn't diminish its value, its importance, its significance. Some of the most life-changing relationships or jobs or situations I've been in were not forever. They were for just a chapter, just a moment in time. And the fact that they're not going to see me through to like the finish line doesn't diminish how important they were in shaping me and who I am. So I really think giving ourselves permission to outgrow things, but also to honor how beautiful and important they were is a necessity in growing older and going from like youth to adulthood. Number 33, this is a big one. As much as you can, get good at change, at changing your mind, at dealing with changes in your relationships and your job and your environment, because change is one of the only guarantees in life. And so many people are really awful at change. So if you can get better at uncertainty, if you can get a bit more comfortable with discomfort, you will be so resilient in this life and so open to opportunities that come by that maybe you weren't expecting, because you're able to like embrace the change and say yes to things and not be deterred by the fact that it's a change and it might be a bit uncertain. I've really tried to cultivate this muscle, and I probably like change a bit too much. Like maybe it can veer me into chaotic territory, but I also think it's a superpower that we can all access if we can get a bit comfortable with uncertainty. Number 34, my word of the year this year is courage. I want to have an incredible relationship with courage and fear, because I've really like just wrestled with fear so much in my life. And part of this is this lesson of kind of transitioning into fearing less instead of trying to be fearless, because fearless is impossible. And I think I was chasing being fearless. I was like, oh, I've got to have no fear. I've got to like show up always strong. And the reality is there's going to be so many fears that constantly crop up. That's life. We're literally wired to have fear. But courage is still moving forward and taking action even when fear is present. Because letting fear stay in the driver's seat rather than moving it, to the back seat and saying like, yep, I see you, but you're not going to take over. I'm going to be courageous. Letting it live in the driver's seat of your life will rob you of everything that you want. If you remember last year, in the beginning of the year, I was really unhappy. So I started a fear list, and without hyperbole, I know I've said this a few times in this episode, but it really did change my life. Like facing these fears one by one that were holding me back, and I felt like holding me captive, and just being like, I'm going to choose to be courageous, and I'm going to show up and I'm going to do it scared. So whatever it looks like for you, whether it's a fear list, whether it's just like remembering the word courage when you come up against something scary, it's really helping me on this journey to overcoming my fear of failure, my fear of rejection, because I always want to choose courage over comfort. The last one, number 35, this is the lesson I really wish I could go back in time and give myself when I was panicking. And I want to give it to anyone who's feeling this way right now. You are not behind. There is no linear or correct timeline. I have spent so much of my 30s panicking that I wasn't in, a relationship that was going to last forever, that I wasn't having kids, that I wasn't moving into a house. I wasn't on the timeline of so many people around me. I felt like I was Peter Pan, honestly, like flying around the world, running away from the life that I really wanted because it wasn't happening for me. So it's like, I better just get away so that I don't have to feel this crushing feeling. But I really believe and see that I was never behind. My timeline was exactly how it was supposed to be. I'm such a believer in that phrase, the universe is unfolding as it should. I literally have it tattooed on myself, and I have to remind myself of that constantly, because if you rush or try to jump the line on your own unique trajectory, you're doing yourself a disservice. The cadence of your life doesn't need to match anybody else's. You are not behind, they are not ahead. Your cadence, your trajectory, your timeline, all it needs to be is true for you. If you're not happy with something, you can change it. If you want to be in a different place than you are now, you can change it, but you don't need to chase what other people are doing just to feel like enough or to feel like you're keeping up. You're not behind, I promise. You're exactly where you should be, and I'm so proud of you. Guys, we made it to the end. Wow, that was a long list of 35 lessons. I feel like I just literally revisited so many important parts of my life. It was a real deep dive into like the inner workings of the past 35 years. I mean, I was a blob for a lot of that, so maybe let's say the past 15 years. But thank you for listening. Thank you for being here and being a part of all of this growth that I have gotten to do by having this show, by talking to amazing, inspiring listeners and experts. And I really hope some of these lessons resonate. And I hope that you will just join me on a lifetime of always learning, always growing, and always sharing the lessons that we amass along the way. I love you guys. You've got this.